Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the multiverse, wherever you might be listening. My name is Rogue Convoy, and welcome to week 2 of Ultimate Mayhem. This last week, we covered Flashpoint from DC Comics, giving you a little bit of insight to Barry Allen's past, present he created, and the future that might have existed, said no one ever. Now, if you haven't checked that video out, please go and check that out. This gives you a little bit more insight into the event that happened. So this week, we're traveling from Earth Zero, which is the prime Earth on DC Comics, into Earth 616 for Marvel. And we are going to be joining Matt Murdock in his descent into madness and eventually regaining his life, trying to create a normalcy that he can have. And this is Born Again. So let's give you a little bit of information on it. And so starting during September of 1986, Frank Miller, the story comes to print, and Frank Miller is the author of this storyline, and it is drawn by David Mazzucchelli. It consisted of 4 parts at that point, of Daredevil numbers 227 through 2231. And when it was reprinted in 2012, the previous story arc, so the previous event leading up to it, and subsequently the 2 volumes that followed it, Daredevil's number 226 and Daredevil's number 232 and 233, were also added in there. And that is the one where Daredevil has met the Avengers, Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor. So when the guy who was writing this series at the time was leaving, the editor asked Frank Miller, who originally brought Daredevil back from the brink of extinction, bringing him back from, before it got canceled, and he asked him to return. Now, as you know, Frank Miller is also the author of Sin City, and he basically, says yes, but he only agrees if the artist will use the script that he's working with and follow those guidelines. Now, the author, there is a rumor, and again, I don't know how much of this is true, that the author went off on his own tangent and did his own thing. So we'll confirm that as we're going. So the pieces of this, there was only pieces of this arc used within this season of Daredevils 2 and 3. There's been basically the after effect of having a giant building dropped on Matt Murdock through Midland Circle. And we see Matt is basically using the same type of event and recovering in a church basement by a sister who we don't actually know who she is. She's just sort of there. So we've only had 2 guys who have played Daredevil currently in live action form. One, which I don't actually accept as Matt Murdock, is Ben Affleck. The other one is Charlie Cox, who everyone knows from the Daredevil series, from the Defenders, and also, if you haven't seen it, spoiler alert, most recently, the No Way Home trilogy. Okay, so I'm gonna give you my first thoughts on this. It's a good pick-me-up story. If you haven't seen that before or haven't read it before, and you're feeling down in the dumps, I suggest picking this up and reading it. It was a really good influential on me. I haven't read this before myself until about the weekend when I started doing my research into this. And I'm a DC guy in my own right. I've never denied that. I enjoy DC. I enjoy their storylines, but Marvel has never been one of my things I pick up. But this was something that I thought, you know what, you guys might enjoy, and people who also know me as a metalhead. So I enjoy Dark Knight's metal, and I enjoy the full story on that. So after doing all the research and whatnot into this event, I found it was such a gripping story because it shows a complete descent into a madness, and then coming back and realizing that his life is a little bit better because of what he went through, trials and tribulations, and he just basically pushed people away. Even like his best friend at that time helped him save him even from prison, and even though he was disbarred. And meanwhile, it's watching the Kingpin basically become so obsessed with Matt Murdock that he basically causes pain, suffering, and other things, and destroys his home. Bravo, Marvel! You put together such a beautiful story for people like me who, yeah, we have a bad day, we want something to read, hence we go with it. Okay, so let's get into this now. So Karen Page, you guys might remember as the office manager, as a private investigator, as a reporter from the Daredevil series, is basically also their secretary throughout the comics. And she's left the two of them to go pursue her own acting career. So while she did have some success in Hollywood, she, after a certain point, the star began to fail, and she became addicted to heroin and moved to Mexico to basically become a porn star. During that time, while she's in Mexico, she runs out of money. So she basically has spent all her money on heroin and all that. But she does have the one secret that somebody would want, and she does trade it for a shot of heroin. Now, after all is said and done, this gentleman who gets the secret sends it up its chain, sends it up the chain, and eventually reaches Wilson Fisk, who is the Kingpin. And so over the next few months, he starts using the information to smear Matt Murdock, as he now knows that Matt Murdock is also Daredevil. He gets his house repossessed. He gets all his money tied up so that the IRS would have to take a closer look at it. And even loses his girlfriend, who he was dating at the time, but then she eventually moved on to Foggy Nelson, who is his best friend and his former partner in the law firm. So Matt begins investigating the circumstances around the smearing of his name. He concludes that the police lieutenant, so basically a gentleman who is supposed to uphold the law but somehow is being bribed, Nicholas Manis was the one who gave him up originally, but he was also needing help to pay for the son's operation that was quite expensive because he had to get a heart transplant. And Matt, though, can't figure out who's behind the actual frame job, so doesn't let him go yet. Foggy manages to save Matt from prison time. So Nicholas said that Matt was perjuring himself with witnesses and whatnot, and has been paying witnesses. So the state has believed that and tends to try to get him some jail time. But Foggy manages to protect him from that, but he loses his license in the process. So with that, basically after all that has gone through and Matt's still kind of sane, Fisk finally has Matt's house destroyed. And as a final taunt to Matt Murdock, Kingpin leaves the Daredevil suit in the wreckage of the house to show that he knows who he is, and also the fact that he's the one responsible for everything that has happened so far. So after that, Fisk basically goes on a rampage, gets everyone killed who knew the secret, which also included Karen, but she manages to escape before the assassins manage to get to her. And so she wants to basically return to New York City to try to find Matt, to try to make everything right. So after everything is said and done, Matt's left homeless. He begins suffering from paranoia and grows quite violent with people pushing him. Basically, he pushes everybody away, his friends included Foggy and whatnot. So he's also being followed by members of Kingpin Syndicate. So he's basically gone mad and now being followed to increase the paranoia. And the people that are following him are basically feeding Kingpin the information on Matt's status, on his mental status, on basically what he's doing. Matt then goes to Kingpin's office after he knows who did it, and now he's going to go there and try to take him down and basically turn him into the person that he's currently become. Kingpin, though, is merciless when it comes to Murdock and nearly kills him. Matt is then placed in a cab, and the cab is pushed off a bridge, making it look like an accident, so there would be no investigation into his death or supposed death. But for a blind man, if he's learning how to, if he knows how to drive, I know there's the whole thing. He can see certain things by tapping and whatnot, but that still wouldn't make it. Doesn't make any sense, Marvel. That is some lazy writing right there. Matt escapes the peril that he's in, and gets back to shore. He begins stumbling through Hell's Kitchen, trying to find the place where his father was trained and whatnot, so he can go pretty much die there instead of in the water. When he arrives at the gym, he is found by Maggie. So this is the woman that we believe that is his mother. Even though she's a nun, we also believe that she is his mother. She takes him to the local church to help him recover and heal from the injuries that he suffered. Ben Urich, who is a trusted confidant of Matt and reporter for the Daily Bugle, visits Manalist while he's in the hospital with his son before the son gets taken in for his second surgery. And due to complications of the heart transplant and whatnot, Manalist's son dies on the table. And then, so basically, with nothing to lose at that point, Manalist confesses to Urich that the whole thing was a frame job and believes that Wilson Fisk, the man who's caused the events of everything that we know so far, is the one responsible for it. One of the nurses at the hospital, though, her name is Nurse Lois, we'll get to her later, is watching basically the two men and has heard enough and breaks into the room, and nearly kills Manalist, but also breaks the fingers of Ben Urich in the process to try to get him off the scent. So after he was nearly killed the first time, after Lois left him alive and all that, Manalist still remains defiant and goes to call Urich from the hospital, basically telling him that yes, this has been a frame job. This has been a so at that point, Manalist remains defiant within the laws because effectively his son has died. It doesn't really matter anymore what he does. And he calls Urich from a hospital bed, and Nurse Lois returns to finish the job that she started originally, which was killing Nicholas Manalist while Ben Urich is listening. Now, she used the broken fingers originally to convince him, you've never heard the name Matt Murdock, nor will you ever again. And basically, it reminds him every time that he's in pain. Now, she kills the guy while the phone is lying on the bed so that Ben Urich can hear everything that's going on. And here is her basically strangling him to death yeah. So tries to use it as intimidation ploy, but Ben would not be deterred now at this point. He goes forward with the story for the Bugle and the information he was given by the now dead lieutenant. So basically, the guy gave him information to an extent, and it gives people time to investigate whether the story was true. So after she's traveled for who knows how long, we don't actually know because they don't really say in the storyline. Karen finally arrives in New York City with the scumbag drug dealer who's been feeding her addiction while trading sex favors for sex, kind of thing. And she goes out to the one person who might know where Matt is, and might know where Matt is. And Foggy has also come to the realization that the scumbag, Paulo Scorsese, that she's been traveling with, has been basically beating her the entire time, and offers a place at his house instead of, staying with this guy, hoping that she'll take the advice on it and return to, yeah. So now Fisk is basically now fixated with killing Matt instead of just, ruining his life. And he uses the connections he has to acquire a super soldier from the U.S. Army. Now, this gentleman's name is Nuke. At the same time, Fisk is visiting a mental asylum where he gets a criminal released and gets him to dress up like Daredevil, giving him the same suit that was made by Melvin Potter, and to look like it was Matt that was about to kill his best friend. Now, the Nurse Lois, has been told she's got to relocate to save herself from being implicated in the murder of the cop. But she refuses, and then goes back after Ben Urich, trying to kill him and leaves his wife hanging in the shower by a tie. Matt, though, has heard about this and he's been listening. Takes up the nursing process and leaves her there for the police to deal with. But then he also gets the tip that his best friend has been pegged for murder by Kingpin, and he rushes there to help out. Karen is hanging out at Foggy's place when she sees Paulo, the drug dealer that was abusing her, that was basically, basically trading her heroin for sex, standing outside up looking at her. When she finally realizes he's there, she tells Foggy she could probably try to convince him to get his help, and steps outside the building, only to be met with bullet fire and all this stuff, because Kingpin's men were waiting and had been given the order to shoot anyone who had escaped the building. Now, Matt comes in and basically takes everybody down, takes down the assassins, takes down the guy who's basically supposed to be Daredevil. And then Karen reveals that she's the one who was the one who gave up Matt's identity for a shot of heroin, leading to the events that has occurred at this point in time. Matt forgives her for the events and has pretty much moved on from his previous life. So he no longer wants to be a lawyer, he just wants to be himself, and has given up everything that he has had in the previous life. So Matt moves in with Karen, his ex-girlfriend, and helps her with the withdrawals of heroin, trying to get her through it, make sure. And he also begins working at a diner as a cook to help support the two of them while they're doing this. Okay, so basically at this point, Nurse Lois has agreed to testify against Fisk, giving up the secret, giving up the identity of her employer, in exchange for a lighter sentence, to which Fisk has her killed. So while she's being interviewed. So he paid off a Daily Bugle reporter that was not Ben Urich, and basically says, yeah, kill her and we'll give you a bunch of money. So during that point, Matt refuses to come out of hiding. So Fisk sends in Nuke and a helicopter basically to kill and hurt as many people as possible throughout Hell's Kitchen. So while he's going on his rampage, going through all this, he destroys Matt's current workplace that he's a chef at. Matt realizes at that point that he needs to get the suit back on because that would give him basically, to help put down Nuke and put down his pilot. Nuke, though, manages to survive the assault, survive the strike against him, but the Avengers come in, so Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man arrive on scene and take him away. So when they have Nuke locked up in a facility, Captain America does some research, breaks into a heist and does some research into the background. Then he breaks into a high security facility to find out more information. And he realizes that Nuke is just a crazy after effect of Project Rebirth. So the project that originally made Captain America, they were trying to recreate it, and hence Nuke was a byproduct of it. So Fisk at this point has realized that Nuke is more of a liability than he needs, so he puts out a death order on him. So basically, order to get him killed, and Nuke is shot and wounded by this attempt. Daredevil at this point has been trying to help rebuild his place of work, and through taking stuff from drug lords and whatnot, taking the money and using that, he manages to find Nuke and steals him away from the Avengers, steals him away from Captain America, and takes him to the Daily Bugle, where he would hope that he can give a statement, hope that he could get him, basically throw Kingpin under the bus. But Nuke dies before they get there. So Nuke dies in Daredevil's arms, but they also wanted to reveal that, yes, America has a super soldier program again. So Captain America arrives again on scene, tries to steal Nuke back from Daredevil, but instead of finding Nuke in Daredevil, he finds one of the assassins who was hired by Fisk to kill Nuke in the first place. Now, this assassin turns against Wilson Fisk, and then he sent a bunch of lawsuits. So basically, he's given the thing with Hell's Kitchen, given a bunch of other lawsuits. But he's able to defeat most of the lawsuits that have come against him, except for maybe one or two, and they currently stick. So that ruins his image to the community. So the people believe that he was a good businessman, believed in faith that this gentleman was just trying to help. No longer the case. He is now a criminal in their eyes. Even the people that are working for him have lost confidence in him. So he's basically still fixated. So he basically still has his interest in Matt for killing Matt, and even though he ruined his life, because he believed he ruined his life, even though we all know now that Captain America was the one responsible for bringing him to justice in the first place. So Matt is now currently living in Hell's Kitchen with his girlfriend and continues to currently fight for the community, fight for himself. That, ladies and gentlemen, has been the story of Born Again in the best way I can describe it to you personally. So given the nature of the topic, we're going to stay in a little bit of dark places next week, and we're going to venture back into DC Comics, back to Earth Zero, where we're going to cross some Batman, some evil Batman, some Justice League, and we're going to talk about the events of Dark Knight's Metal. Then after that, I'm kicking the door open with What If, or we might do something else. We'll see where that goes. And then the week after that, we're going to do a random topic. Now, I already kind of know where I'm going to go with it, but it's not falling in the comic lore. It's falling in something else. What will it be? I know, but you'll have to tune in to find out. Till then, let the multiverse guide you, and we will see you next time. I am Rogue Convoy, and this has been Born Again Ultimate Mayhem Edition.